Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Down But Not Out. Today, I'm joined by Erik Huberman. Erik is a serial entrepreneur, investor, and speaker. His full-service marketing agency, Hawke Media, in 2019 was recognized as one of Glassdoor's best places to work, number 893 on the Forbes 5000 list, and UpCity Top Los Angeles Digital Marketing Agency. Erik is also the host of the podcast Hawke Talk and partner in several investment firms. Erik, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, I don't know if my introduction suffice, so tell the audience.
I think we got one miss, which is the author of the Hawke Method. It's coming out in a couple weeks.
Perfect, so perfect. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, but good. I don't know where you pulled it from, but that worked.
Yeah, I got most of it from your LinkedIn and
nice.
And Hawke Media's LinkedIn, so worked out. Sorry about missing that one, but
you're fine.
Yeah, give us a bit more in depth into how you got started in entrepreneurship and where your career started.
Yeah, started in entrepreneurship. I mean, my dad was an entrepreneur. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. I just grew up thinking I would run my own thing at some point. Entrepreneur wasn't a word for me until the past decade, I'd say. Before that, when I was younger, it was just running my own thing, running a business. And I mean, it started at 6 years old. I took a bunch of my parents' stuff and walked door to door in our neighborhood selling the stuff I decided as a 6-year-old my parents didn't need anymore. 8 years old, I had a lemonade stand, and then I started buying and selling Beanie Babies and made a few $1,000 doing that. And the whole motivation for that was I wanted to buy an electric guitar because I'm Erik, and the only other Erik I knew was Eric Clapton. So I got to be like him. So yeah, I've always had that side of it, but I actually thought I was going to grow up to be a musician until I was about 12 or 13. And then I realized I wasn't that good. So maybe I should look at the business side. And there's a whole bunch of other details to that, but got into business, really liked real estate. My dad had gone from waste to real estate and had been grown up around the real estate business. And so when I got out of school, I went and worked for a real estate firm and started exactly a week to the day before the entire US banking industry collapsed in 2008. And so about 6 months in, I knew that it was not going to be sustainable. I was making no money. I ended up making $350 that year, which is not enough to live in LA. Just to be straight for anyone that doesn't live here, $350 does not cover your expenses and your rent in Los Angeles for the year. So I started building an online music company. I built that for 2 years, got it to profitability, and then brought in a CEO to take it over because I didn't believe it was ever going to be big enough to, like, as I put it at the time at 24, it wasn't going to put my kids through college, which at 24 was an interesting comment, but that's how I was thinking about it. And so I ended up leaving, and then I started a t-shirt subscription company called Swag of the Month, sold it after a year and a half, then started a women's activewear brand, sold it after a year to Bally Total Fitness, and then started advising and consulting for brands, found that the marketing world was completely broken and that 99% of marketers and agencies, frankly, are full of shit, and went, I need to fix this. So I hired a little SWAT team to help me with some clients I was advising for. And that was the start of Hawke Media. The idea, we'd go in, figure out where the holes are in a marketing org, and then spin up different experts month to month and a la carte to plug those in and take over marketing. So we could be, the whole mission of Hawke is accessibility to great marketing for everyone. So be the best at what we do, but really easy to work with.
Lot to unpack there.
Yeah,
a few different entrepreneurial journeys and successes on the way to Hawke Media. What made you know? What was your, if you remember, the decision process transitioning from that music business to the direct to consumer?
Our customers were independent artists. They don't by nature have any money. So we were doing a great service. We ended up with some really great musicians on this platform. It was business coaching for musicians, and we ended up with some successes out of it and all that. But I found that 90% of musicians are struggling artists because they don't want to work hard, not because they're not good at music. Like, they don't want to practice. They don't want to actually put the work in to generate music. They just use the idea of a struggling musician as an excuse to not be successful. And the few that are good are awesome, but I became a little jaded with, like, okay, so we're churning through all these people because if they're not famous in a month, they're done working. And so we kept just dealing with that over and over again. I just went, you know what, this isn't going to ever be big. And I got, I don't want to say fed up, but I got disenfranchised with the idea that it was ever going to be a big deal because it felt like a hamster wheel.
Yeah, fair enough. And then the two apparel businesses,
Mhm.
which spun into a consulting firm, a marketing firm, and then which spun into Hawke Media.
Yep.
And what year are we roughly?
So
2010?
2010 was Swag of the Month. 2012 was Ellie, the activewear brand, and
Yeah,
2013 when I started consulting. Beginning of 2014 is when I started Hawke.
right on. And then your Down But Not Out story is around Hawke Media.
Yep.
Tell us about the early days of Hawke Media ramping up to that story.
Yeah. So, I started consulting. I mean, how that happened, I had built a reputation in LA as being one, I'd sold to e-com companies really early in the e-com rush, so to speak. And so a bunch of companies were trying to figure out how to use digital, how to use e-com. And so I started consulting, and there wasn't anyone else out there like me that had success at the founder level and then would now go consult and work with other companies. That's a rare thing
Yeah.
I've come to find. And so I got clients really easily and then I started consulting with them and started seeing the results and was like, oh, this, what worked for me and my companies does work for all these other guys. And so kind of came up with a marketing methodology with, again, 8 years is now in a book, but that aside, we started running it. And about 3 months in, I went, wow, there's a lot of work here. I hired an assistant to start helping me. And then 6 months in, it really was, I mentioned this already, but I kept trying to find agencies to help these guys. So I was just by myself consulting. So I'd try to hire agencies, hire in-house. And I found again that 99% of agencies or in-house were full of shit. And the few agencies that were any good wanted long contracts, high minimums, something that made them hard to work with. And the independents that were really good marketers were really expensive too. So again, there was no access to great marketing. A lot of the companies I was working with couldn't afford Omnicom and WPP. So I decided just to hire a few people I knew that were good at what they did. So I hired an email marketer, a Facebook marketer, a strategy person, like a fractional CMO, web designer, et cetera, and then went back to these companies and said, it's all a la carte, month to month, et cetera. And so month one, I doubled my revenue. So I basically took my consulting income, hired these people for cheap and told them, hey, if it grows, we'll all make more money. And then it doubled the first
Yeah.
month because everybody hired us for at least one service. It went great. We're off to the races. Got a little small office in Santa Monica. It was basically a room like this with a conference table in the middle of it, and that was our office. And when a window that faced a wall this far away, and I'll never forget that because I told my stepdad about it. And he goes, "Are you working or staring out the fucking window?" It's like, touche. So so yeah, we started building, and like it was off to the races immediately. We realized that we had hit a vein where like every company needed what we did and we were good at what we did and we just kept growing. And so, and leading to that story happened a month into really starting the business. And so I built this team, we get to work, double our revenue in the first month. And I don't know if you want me to tell more of the ramp up or get right into it.
Well, just how many employees were you at revenue wise, kind of roughly?
Yeah. So we were doing
some numbers in there.
Yeah. January of 14, I think we did 65 grand in revenue.
Yeah.
And I had, I think, 7 people.
Yeah.
So,
and then how many clients roughly?
8, give or take.
8. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then someone left for Hawaii.
Yeah. So February comes around, and it was right before Valentine's Day. I know this because my wife reminds me that on our first date, which was February 13th, a month to the day after I started Hawke Media, I met my wife.
Yeah.
And I told her this story, venting that had just happened while we were sitting there kind of panicking about what the fuck I was going to do. So somewhere around the second week of February, it was the Monday, so I could probably look it up, but it was probably Monday the 8th or something. I get an email at 3 a.m. So I woke up at like whatever, 6:30. And I got an email that's from our email marketer that says, "Hey, Erik, long story short, I met a girl over the weekend, asked her where in the world, or fell in love, asked her where in the world she wanted to go. She said Hawaii. We're here now. I'll be working remotely." And it's a selfie of him and this girl in front of the Waikiki Towers. And I'm like, half asleep, like looking at this, like, what? And so
it sounds like a start to like a Netflix movie or something.
Right. And at the time, the guy was managing half of our revenue. So I try to call him. Hawaii's 3 hours earlier than LA. So calling him at 6 a.m. is worthless. He emailed me at midnight his time. So I try to call him. Obviously doesn't answer. I think I got a hold of him around noon that day. So 9 a.m. his time. And I knew if I went off on him, that was going to be counterproductive. Like it wasn't going to go
Yeah.
anywhere. So I just went, hey man, like congratulations, but I need you to handle your shit. So he's like, of course, Erik. Like I'll be working remotely, which wasn't a thing. I never talked about this.
Yeah.
I don't work remotely. We have an office, but he's like, I'll be working remotely. We'll be fine. Everything's handled. Don't worry about it. I'm like, okay, then we're good. Enjoy Hawaii. Go. I hang up. Next day, he managed 4 of our 8 clients. Every one of them calls me. What the fuck? Brian, he hasn't delivered on this. Try not to name him. But he hasn't delivered on this. He hasn't delivered on that. What happened here? And they're freaking out. And so I start to try to call him again, and I can't get a hold of him. And about 3 p.m. he calls me back, and now I can't hold back. So I was just like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
the fuck, man? What are you doing? He's like, hey, Erik, I'm going to stop you right there. This is the happiest day of my life. I'm getting married, and I need you to respect that. And he hangs up on me. And I mean, I was so stressed because it was like, I knew he was out. Like I got it. He's nuts and gone. I looked at my business partner at pretty much that point, but Tony, and I'm like, what the fuck do we do? He's like, I guess I'm going to learn email marketing because we got to service this. So he went home and read. We were using Bronto at the time that was recently shuttered. I think Oracle bought them and just turned it off. But he went home and read all the Bronto blogs and learned how to do it and took over. So he was able to save the clients. But I'm fast forwarding too far. I didn't know that. So we're sitting there and we're like, what do we do here? We're not going to get a hold of him. He's gone. We don't know. We do know how to do email marketing, but it's not like we don't have anything else going on our plates right now. We have other shit to do. Like, how the hell are we going to keep up with this work right now? We're already grinding. And, I'm definitely panicked because, again, if those clients decided to fire us, which we're month to month, that's half our revenue. I can't pay for our employees anymore. I can't pay for the office I just signed a year lease on. So we're, I'm anticipating all that while trying to figure out what the hell to do about this guy. And so that's when my partner goes, I'll go figure out how to do this. And he was a smart guy. And so Tony ran the music company for 3 years after I left. He was the one that took over and built it and kept it profitable. And I was right. 3 years later, it hadn't really grown that much. And it wasn't a fault of his. He's a sharp guy. It was just not the right horse to bet on. And so we shut it down and he joined me. And so he went home and started doing email marketing, and he was frankly better at client management. So he went home and started doing that. I get out, and back to the point, my dad was an entrepreneur. And so I called him and was like, told him this same story of like, get this email and then this and that and that. And I go through, whatever the 5 minutes it just took me to tell this story, I tell him in the same detail with a lot more emotion because it wasn't 8 years ago. It was that day going, what the hell am I going to do? And his response at the time was, after 5 minutes of ranting, oh yeah, that shit happens all the time. I got to run, talk to you later. And he hangs up.
Yeah.
I'm driving. I still remember it because I still remember I must have had to leave early because it was February, but it was still light out, which means it was before 6 p.m. at the office. But I remember the sun was in my eyes because it sets in the west. So it was probably, 4:30, 5 p.m. I'm driving and he says that and hangs up. And I'm just like, what the fuck? What do you mean it happens all the time? People just take what do you mean? Now, smartest lesson I ever learned in business, because your podcast is a testament to it. Like, this shit happens all the time. But what ended up happening, Tony handled it. We kept those clients. The guy came back, showed up, I think it was like a week or 2 later, married. And he was like, I'm back to work. I'm like, no, you're not. Get the fuck out. That was it.
Yeah.
And we hired a new email marketer and we started building from there and we moved on. But it was definitely like we were on the verge of losing half our business and having to fire everyone and, not go the direction we thought we were going to go. And it took a great business partner that jumped in and handled it. And then understanding that like, this is the first of many things that are going to come like this. And that's part of it too, because we know it never ends and the problems just get bigger. So that was the first month in business. Since then, there's been thousands of these stories.
Yeah. This one definitely set you back, almost put you out. How long from like when you got that 3 a.m. to when you're like, okay, that 3 a.m. email to, okay, we're good. We're going to be okay. How long was that period?
2 weeks. Oh, long
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we weren't,
I remember
basically, again, it was like Tuesday when he said that. I think it was it was by when, I can't remember the timeline, but it was Tuesday or Wednesday that we figured out like, this isn't good. So by Friday, we started to be able to pick up the slack, but we still weren't sure if we were going to be out of the woods because our clients
Yeah.
were pissed. And then through the next week, we were able to like really get their clients to calm down, apologize for what happened, figure it out, kind of thing.
And you didn't lose any clients at that point.
We did not.
Correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you avoided layoffs, except for getting rid of that one gentleman that looks like he could
I feel like
leave
he
at any
kind of
time.
quit
Yeah.
if you looked.
Yeah. Yeah. Are they still together? I feel like that's a question on a lot of people's minds. Do you know if those two are still together?
They are not.
Okay. All right. I feel like that was brewing in my mind. It would be
Yeah.
brewing in others as well. No, that's an interesting story, interesting setback. Any big brands you had at the time that you were like, were your clients mostly
Yeah, no, we
equal
were
in value, or were
we
there?
were Red Bull, Verizon, HP, as well as some smaller brands, Valley Total
Yeah.
Fitness. Yeah, no, it was
Yeah.
not a good situation. I mean, what I've learned, like, again, that is the biggest lesson I've learned, is that this shit happens all the time, like, sincerely.
Yeah.
And so I was on the phone. You mentioned before this lawsuits, you know, at this scale, at this size in California, you're going to end up with someone. We went to court once over a guy suing us because he had like 15 customers for his brand, and we put him on Facebook ads to try to scale him. 2 of his subscription customers quit. He decided that Facebook stole those 2 customers and that we enabled them to do that. I still to this day don't know what that means. We tried to ask him.
Yeah.
No rational thought, but he took us to court and it was worth just settling. So we just gave him his money back. That's the only time we've gone to court. But we had another time that we did have to go to arbitration. And at the end of it, we settled with the person. They literally made up a bunch of accusations, and it was like our insurance and us decided like this isn't worth going through a legal battle with, which is the shitty underbelly of legal, is like half the time it just gets settled because it's not worth fighting. And we decided to settle, which we don't do anymore because we also didn't want to set the precedent. But I told the mediator, you know, hey, you were great, but I hope I never see you again, because he's like a professional mediator, like you do. And he's like, on the contrary, I hope I see you again, because everyone doing well ends up seeing me again. And maybe next time it'll be a class action lawsuit. And I'm like, don't tell me that. But
that's a weird,
threw that by some more successful friends of mine. Yep. Like, show me a Fortune 500 that hasn't had a class action lawsuit. Like, it's the shitty part of our legal system. But that being said, then show me the biggest companies in the world: Tim Cook, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, let's say, obviously not Steve Jobs anymore, but Bill Gates, whoever it is, they're dealing with the biggest problems anyone would deal with business. It's not like you get to a point where there's a finish line. Like, these just get bigger, and and I remember several times when like revenue got really thin, or we missed our numbers, or something happened. Every time I'd run that by a more successful business person than me, they're like, yeah, not going to be the last time. Like, if you're trying to do anything, you're going to take risk. If you take risk, you're going to get over your skis. If you don't take risk, then you're just going to decline anyways. There's not really a way to just flatline in business. You can't really like manage that perfectly. You're either going to be growing or shrinking. You're not going to just do it. Very rare does that happen. And so if you know that, then you're going to be trying to grow, and you're going to make mistakes and screw things up, and you're going to mess up. You're going to shrink, and you're going to have to cut everything off anyways. So it's just part of it.
There was a book, and I'm missing the title of it now, early on, that I read, that talked about like the reason you have one problem is because you don't have another problem, right? The reason you have HR problems is because you hired people, and that's the reason you don't have a problem of being understaffed, right? Like, just because you have one problem is because you don't have another problem. So you're always going to have problems. And you're always gonna have to put up with them.
And there's gonna be times over and over again that those problems could be, you know, for your business, life-threatening. And that, I don't think that only happens once in almost any business. Like, there's going to be times if you're a fundraising business, you're gonna run out of funding. If you're a bootstrap business, you might run out of cash, or you might get close to it, you know, making payroll. You always hear these stories from entrepreneurs about like struggling to make payroll. And then you realize like it's a pretty common thing at some phase in the business to do. And over time you get more solid. Like, you become a lot more sturdy as you build a business. You should do it intentionally. It's not just going to happen, but through the lifetime of business, you put more cash in the bank. You end up with lines of credit. You end up with things that can protect you in case you make a wrong step. And most entrepreneurs do it intentionally. I thankfully heard a story. A friend of mine bootstrapped, actually he says it publicly, 1-800-GOT-JUNK, got to 100 million in revenue, and made some bad cash management decisions. And he had to borrow $250,000 from his mom to help him pay payroll. So,
and that's a 9-figure business, right? That's still going through that issue. I remember hearing the story of Bill Gates went through that issue one time when Microsoft was fairly large, and he's like, I'm never going through that issue again. So when he was actively running it, he would always have a year's worth of cash in the bank because he's like, I don't want to deal with that again. But it happens to everybody, and it's not.
By
always,
the way, and people say, yeah, have a year's worth of cash in the bank. If you're trying to grow a bootstrap startup,
that's also very
not going to happen.
It's a very hard decision. Yeah. And how do you justify that to your investors? Hey, I'm using you as a line of credit pretty much, right? So I don't run out of cash.
And that's the thing. You can raise capital to have that, which that's fine. That's basically what Bill Gates did. But I've heard that from people that told me that before. I'm like, I don't run that way at all. Why would I want to be sitting with that kind of cash when I'm trying to grow my business? Like, I'd rather go invest that. Like, if I actually had, like, we did $36 million in revenue last year. If I had, let's say, 30 million sitting in the bank, I would never have 30 million sitting in the bank. It would not, like, there's just no way. That's a irresponsible way to run my business unless I'm hedging
too much opportunity cost.
And it goes back to, like, what are you trying to do? Grow or shrink? Like, if I'm trying to grow, I can't just sit on that cash. If I just want to sit on cash, fine, then I should sell. Like, there's, that's not I don't think the right move for most people.
Yeah. Like you said, these problems come from everywhere. If it's not a lawsuit, it might be a cash trap. It might be your email marketer leaving for Hawaii, right? But as you go through these, what do you think they get easier to deal with? Like, what is your take on that?
Perfect. I was just going to go there. So no, I think they're harder problems, but I think mindset's a big part of this. And I don't want to get too touchy-feely with this, but it took me a couple of years to learn that. Actually, probably 3 years to learn that lesson of, like, that shit all happens all the time, which now we say all the time. And learning that lesson combined with really recognizing that I'm here by choice. I hear so many entrepreneurs struggle because they talk about how much stress it is to be an entrepreneur, how hard it is, blah, 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 blah. It's like, so get a job. Like, sorry, like, you chose to be an entrepreneur. There is no one forcing
you to be here. Yeah.
So take that ownership, stop being a victim. And once you take that ownership, then realize that part of your job as by choice an entrepreneur is to deal with the biggest problems at your company, because if they weren't big problems, the rest of your team would handle it. So you're going to have to handle the big ones. And so that's what you signed up for. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. If you do want to do it, then do it. And so when you take that power on and it's by choice, then when these things happen, it's like, yeah, but this is what I wanted to do, right? This is what I signed up to do.
Yeah.
It's like going and playing football and you get tackled and you're like, I hate this sport. It's like, then quit. Like, this is part of it. So not saying that I enjoy dealing with some of the challenges we deal with, but I know I signed up for it now. And so now acknowledging that I'm here by choice allows me to go, yep, this is part of it. All right. And you take the emotion out of it, which means less stress, less anxiety, less, the depression side of it. And you can just have fun with it. And then it's like, you can remind yourself, like, if I ever don't like this, I can always leave. Like, you do have that option. Yeah. Not that as, like, I don't go there, meaning, like, I'm not, like, constantly deciding if I want to stay. It's just like, I could if I wanted to. I have that freedom. So you get that, like, drama out of the way. And now it's just like, I'm here by choice. Let's go.
Yeah, I think that's a great lesson, and definitely something that I need to take in as well. The one thing that perception's everything, right? You could perceive like, I don't want to do this task today. Like, it sucks. I don't want to deal with this. Or if you just switch your perception on it, you actively try to go, okay, this isn't that bad to deal with, then it gets a lot easier to deal with. Exactly. The other thing that always helps me with those is, and this might be a little touchy-feely, over dramatic, but none of this actually matters at the end of the day, right? Like, we're floating on a rock through space. So if none of it, if humans were cease to exist on Earth, most other species would probably be better. So none of it actually matters. Therefore, don't take it so seriously. Don't take your own problem so seriously.
And it's easier said than done. There's something biological about, like, when you feel a threat to your business or ego, you feel a threat to your life. So it feels like it's threatening, but that's why it's so important to try to take the feelings out of it. Just it's okay. Yeah. You'll be fine. Just, it's never going to be the outcome is almost never going to be as bad as what you think it can be.
Yeah. That might be why Zuckerberg and Musk might be so, some people say they look robotic, but that might be why they're so successful as well. They're able to pull all their emotion out of everything, right?
Yep. Well, it's a higher level of thinking, actually. Like, the part of the brain that's logic versus emotion, like, it is a higher level of thinking. That being said, like, being emotionless has a lot of challenges in a human run world. You have to be empathetic too. But I
Yep.
think for your own sake, not letting your emotion, by the way, it ends up happening both ways. Once you get level headed on the downside, you also get level headed on the upside. You win a big award, it's like, okay, cool, back to work. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, which is kind of a shame, honestly. The high highs and low lows go away because they come with each other, but it's
Yeah.
much more sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to ride that roller coaster, right? Up and
No.
down all the time. That means you have to level out the opposite, level out the level.
Yep.
Well, it's stoicism at its perfect
Yeah.
definition right there, being stoic about everything, right?
Yep.
Did you ever consider giving up or quitting through that moment specifically?
That
Like it
no.
was early on, like, no, yeah,
No, because it was more like I've always almost always taken the when I have like an immediate threat like that, it's a
yeah,
challenge to me. And I almost like I'm the type of person who like want to rise to the occasion, like I go to battle. Like when COVID hit, all this kind of stuff, like that's just how I naturally react, is like I'm
yeah,
gonna work harder, I'm gonna get into this, I want to roll up my sleeves. And I almost have to fight that a little bit now because when we have challenges in the business now that I don't need to be involved in and my executives can handle, I almost get in the way sometimes. I'm like, no, I'm here. Let's go. I'm ready to
yeah,
fight.
yeah,
Like, go get the fuck, go
yeah,
do your thing. Like, we got it. It's happening. Like
yeah,
the past couple of weeks, like we've been affected. Facebook's taken a huge hit. That's affected our business.
yeah,
Thankfully, we're diversified. Like Facebook isn't all we do. So it's just been a little bit of a hit, but we still need to do some things to rectify it. I come in ready to like guns blazing, like we're going to fix all of this. And my head of media and my head of services are like, we already have a full plan. It's a good one. We got it. It's like,
yeah,
okay. So getting used to that is, but no, I didn't think about quitting. I will say there was a long period. So 2018 and 19, we barely made any money because there's these growing pains that we went through where it's like we needed an exec team. We're not quite there on revenue. Like we needed a lot of infrastructure, not quite there on revenue, but we needed it. So it was like investing in the business for long-term scalability. And but it is really tough to run a business for 2 years, grind like you do any other year, and not make any money. Like it's just a hard thing to see through. And so private equity started knocking, and we took some meetings to take offers for the business. And that I'd say more is what like giving up would look like for me than like just closing down a
yeah,
business. I wouldn't do that. So we had those meetings, we looked at it, but realized that unless I have something else I'd rather be doing or want to retire, which I'm a long way from that, it almost no one's going to offer me the value for my business that I could derive out of it myself. That's the point.
yeah,
I want to buy my business for cheap so they can make a return. Well, if I keep
yeah,
it, then I make that return. So
yeah.
it became, am I retiring or am I done? Nope. Do I need the cash? Nope. All right. Well, then we're going to keep doing this. So but I did come close. Yeah, 2018.
Yeah. So not early on with that moment. Back
Yeah.
to the retirement, because I talked to other founders about this
Yep.
as well. When do you think you'll get bored after you retire? Like no matter your age, really.
I don't think I'm going to retire.
No, I honestly, I don't think I could
Yeah.
either at this point.
Well,
I don't see it in my.
not to be a dick, but I'd correct that. I don't think you could. Again, it's your option. You can retire.
Right. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
But yes,
sure.
to the point, I do think I would be bored out of my mind, and I love this stuff. Like my business partner said it to me. He's thankfully one of the more blunt people to me, that like I like being the guy, and I'm not going to deny that. I like doing podcasts. I like writing a book. I like running a business. We just expanded into Europe. We're expanding into Asia. We have people in China. Like it's like this is all exciting to me. All these new exploratory things that I get to learn and do. I love this, and so I don't know when that ends. I hope it doesn't. So that if it doesn't, then I'll keep going. And if it does, then I'll probably find the next thing to, scratch that itch. That's why we have a venture fund and a financing arm and all these other things we try to do.
I think that's a good way of simplifying it to being that guy or that person, that woman, right? And I actually remember the moment when I realized I wanted to be. I was working for someone else at a marketing agency, and they had just won the Small Business of the Year or whatever. And I saw them on stage. I'm like, oh, I want to be that person. Like, I want to be the one on stage, which sparked that entrepreneurial side of, okay, how do I do that? I want to be that person. Well, you really have to go into business and for yourself and build that up in order to do that. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's all a trade-off, but I mean, the biggest driver for me is like, I want to get everything life has to offer personally and professionally. So got thankfully a successful business that allows me to do a lot of fun things personally too, but also I get to do all these things that I just mentioned and like try new things and explore new things. And it all goes back to the benefit of the business. Like it's fun, like just constantly learning and growing.
So to get back to the story, and we'll wrap up here in a minute.
Sure.
So 2012, 2013, business started to take off.
I was 2014.
2014, sorry. 2014, business started to take off. Early on, crazy, unique story of an individual on your team running all your email campaigns, losing half your clients, half your revenue early on. You were able to turn it around within about 2 weeks. Really your first down but not out moment, give or take, maybe the more serious one.
I'd say that was probably my first in this business. I've had plenty in the other businesses, but that was the first in this.
And then since 2014 and that moment, Hawke Media has obviously scaled up. What are you at right now with employees?
We're 320.
320. You got some venture activities on the go as well. We've got a book coming out, got a podcast. So things have definitely turned around from that moment and a great scale up over the past, was that 8-9 years?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. No, it's worked out.
Any other lessons from these down but not out moments that you'd share with someone going through one of the first, or
come up with a plan and like so sort of like a scenario planning has been a big one. One of the probably most stressful parts of my Hawke career was COVID. We lost 25% of our clients in a week, and like I didn't know if that was the start of a trend. So it's really stressful until you can step out of it and then just like, this is the situation, stop stressing. What do we do? What can we control? Let's figure it out. And in that situation, I didn't know whether we were going to keep dropping or not. So I ran scenarios of like, what happens if we drop 20% of revenue, 40, 60, 80, 100? Let's just bucket it. And what is our game plan? Do we have to do layoffs? Do we not? Blah, blah, blah. And then let's make that. And then we know what the decision is going to be when we do it. And then let's just focus on trying to mitigate that number as much as possible. And that's worked to retain our clients, to bring in new ones, all that kind of stuff. Frankly, like we always do, but let's put a little more work into it. And that's what we ended up doing. And we ended up coming out really strong and so in any of these situations, it's going to be hard not to feel like you just got hit by a bus when a big problem comes to you in the business. It's like feels life threatening. You're going to feel like your life is threatened. Take a second, take a breath, shrug it off. Doesn't matter. Now, what do you do? What are you going to do about it? That's it. Like, what do you want the outcome to be? Okay. What do you need to do to get to that outcome? And that mindset is super important, because again, it'll save you emotionally a lot, because these are going to happen. And then it'll actually allow you to function rationally and solve problems probably a lot more pragmatically.
Yeah, I like that. I think that helps me with solving these issues as you go through, right? Take a step back, take inventory, look at the situation, and then try to plan your contingencies of what's going to happen if this happens. I think that's good.
Perfect.
All right. Well, Erik, that's all for this episode. So thank you for sharing your down but not out story with us. To everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave us a review. Also, subscribe to the show to be alerted of new episodes. And finally, like and share this episode on social media. Help us spread the word of down but not out. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Erik.
Thank you.